Aisling stood at the edge of the sacred grove, her eyes scanning the familiar landscape of towering oaks and ancient stones. The grove was a place of immense power, a sanctuary for her people, and now, a target for the invading forces that threatened their land. She felt a mix of fear and determination welling up within her, knowing that the responsibility of protecting this hallowed ground fell squarely on her shoulders. She took a deep breath and stepped into the grove, the dappled sunlight filtering through the leaves and casting a golden glow on the moss-covered ground. The air was thick with the scent of wildflowers and the distant sound of a bubbling spring. Aisling closed her eyes, reaching out with her senses to connect with the ancient magic that pulsed through the grove.
Aisling.
A deep, familiar voice called out. She opened her eyes to see Elder Druid Bradan standing before her, his weathered face lined with wisdom and concern. He leaned heavily on his intricately carved staff, the symbols etched into the wood glowing faintly in the dim light.
Elder Bradan, I have come as you requested.
She greeted, respectfully. Bradan nodded, his blue eyes piercing and serious.
The time has come for you to take up your role as the guardian of the sacred grove. Our people are in great danger, and only through the power of this place can we hope to stand against the invaders.
Aisling, feeling the weight of his words, said,
I am ready, Elder. What must I do?
Bradan's gaze softened slightly, and he gestured for her to follow him deeper into the grove. They walked in silence, the ancient trees whispering secrets above them. Eventually, they reached a small clearing where a stone altar stood, covered in intricate carvings that glowed with an inner light.
This altar is the heart of the grove. It holds a power that has been passed down through generations of our people. To access it, you must commune with the spirits of our ancestors.
Aisling felt a shiver run down her spine. She had heard tales of the spirits that watched over the grove, but she had never seen them herself.
How do I do that?
Bradan placed a gentle hand on her shoulder.
Close your eyes and open your heart. Let the spirits guide you.
It was all happening fast, but she had been preparing for this day for many days. Aisling nodded and took a deep breath, closing her eyes as instructed. She focused on the sounds around her, the rustling of leaves, the chirping of birds, and the distant murmur of the spring. Slowly, she felt a warmth spread through her chest, and a soft, ethereal light filled her mind. When she opened her eyes, she gasped. Standing before her were the spirits of her ancestors, their forms shimmering like morning mist. They looked at her with a mix of pride and expectation, their eyes glowing with ancient wisdom.
Welcome, Aisling.
One of the spirits spoke, a tall figure with long, flowing hair and piercing green eyes.
You have been chosen to protect this sacred grove. Not only is this your ancestral right, but with your courage and strength through these years, you have proven to be worthy. Do you accept this duty?
Aisling nodded, her voice steady despite the awe she felt.
I accept.
The spirits nodded in approval, and the light around them intensified. Aisling felt a surge of energy flow through her, connecting her to the grove in a way she had never experienced before. She could feel the pulse of the earth beneath her feet, the whisper of the wind through the trees, and the powerful magic that resided in every living thing around her.
You are now the guardian. Use this power wisely and protect our people.
With that, the spirits began to fade, their forms dissolving into the air like mist in the morning sun. Aisling felt a profound sense of peace and purpose settle over her. She turned to Bradan, who was watching her with a proud smile.
You have done well, Aisling, but our task is not yet complete. The invaders draw closer, and we must prepare for their arrival.
Aisling nodded, Her resolve hardened.
I will not let them desecrate this place.
Together, they began to gather herbs, stones, and other materials needed to enhance the grove's protective magic. As they worked, Bradan shared stories of the grove's history, of battles fought and won, and of the sacrifices made by their ancestors to keep this land safe. Aisling recalled the teachings of her mother, who had taught her everything. Her mother had told her about the magic and the spirits that guarded it. The magic that had been there for centuries, protecting their community. When she was 12 years old, her mother had started preparing her for this responsibility, teaching her balance, courage, and strength. Even though she was young, the community respected her and knew she was the right choice for a guardian. Aisling herself was always a leader in her friends' group, and always showed others how to care and be strong at the same time. Now that she was practicing real magic, she felt strong and determined.
The power you now possess is not just for defense. It can also heal and guide. Remember that, Aisling. The true strength of a druid lies in balance.
Days passed, and the grove thrummed with energy as Aisling and Bradan wove intricate spells of protection and concealment. They created barriers that would confuse and deter the invaders, making it nearly impossible for them to find the grove. Aisling felt the power within her growing stronger, her connection to the grove deepening with each passing day. Then, one morning, the tranquility of the grove was shattered by the sound of approaching footsteps. Aisling's heart raced as she and Bradan stood at the edge of the clearing, watching as a group of rugged warriors emerged from the forest, led by a fierce-looking man with dark hair and a scarred face. Chieftain Cormac, Aisling realized. The leader of the invaders.
Stand aside.
Cormac demanded, his voice rough and commanding.
We will access the power of this grove.
Aisling stepped forward, her hands glowing with the energy of the grove.
I am the guardian of this grove, and you will not be allowed to enter.
Cormac laughed, a harsh sound that grated on her nerves.
You think a mere girl can stand against us? We will take what we want, and there is nothing you can do to stop us.
Aisling felt a surge of anger, but she quickly calmed herself, remembering Bradan's teachings. She closed her eyes and reached out to the spirits, feeling their comforting presence surround her. When she opened her eyes, she was no longer alone. The spirits of her ancestors stood with her, their forms shimmering with power. They looked at Cormac and his warriors with stern, unyielding gazes. Aisling stood steady and strong.
The spirits of my ancestors stand with me. Leave now, or face their wrath.
Cormac hesitated, a flicker of doubt crossing his face. But he quickly shook it off, raising his sword. The warriors charged forward, but as they crossed into the grove, they were met with an invisible barrier. They stumbled back, confusion and fear in their eyes. Aisling raised her hands, and the ground beneath the invaders began to tremble. Vines erupted from the earth, wrapping around their legs and pulling them down. The spirits moved among the warriors, their ethereal forms passing through them and sapping their strength. The invaders' weapons fell from their hands, their movements growing sluggish and weak. Cormac roared in frustration, trying to break free of the vines that held him. He looked at Aisling with a mixture of rage and fear.
What is happening?
It is the power that comes from the heart, not strength. Men like you will never understand it.
Aisling replied, her voice calm and powerful. With a final, desperate effort, Cormac broke free of the vines and charged at Aisling. But before he could reach her, a blinding light erupted from the altar, engulfing him and his warriors. The light pulsed with ancient energy, its brilliance blinding. Aisling felt its power surge through her, intensifying the connection between her and the grove. The invaders were thrown back by the force, their cries of surprise and pain echoing through the trees. When the light faded, the grove stood serene and untouched, the invaders lying motionless on the ground. Cormac struggled to rise, his face twisted with fury and fear. Aisling stepped forward, her eyes glowing with the power of the ancestors.
You sought to defile this sacred place for your own gain. But this grove is protected by forces beyond your understanding. Leave now and never return, or you will face a fate far worse than death.
Cormac's eyes widened with terror as he looked into Aisling's glowing eyes. He scrambled to his feet, his warriors slowly following suit, their strength and will broken. Without a word, he turned and fled, his men close behind him, disappearing into the forest. Aisling watched them go, a mixture of relief and exhaustion washing over her. The spirits of her ancestors gathered around her, their forms shimmering with approval.
You have done well, Aisling.
The spirit of the tall figure with green eyes spoke.
You have proven yourself a true guardian of this sacred grove.
Aisling bowed her head, humbled by their praise.
Thank you. I could not have done it without your guidance.
The spirits began to fade, their forms dissolving into the air. Aisling felt a deep sense of peace settle over her. She turned to Bradan, smiling. Bradan was proudly watching her. He nodded and thanked her for protecting the grove and the people with such courage and strength. Together, they walked back to the heart of the grove, the ancient trees whispering their approval. Aisling knew that there would be more challenges ahead, but she felt ready to face them, armed with the power of the grove and the wisdom of her ancestors. Her mother's words echoing in her mind. Always remember that the strength of the heart and mind is greater than the strength of the muscle.